much of an introduction to me because it's actually a 3-hour presentation. I'm putting in 90 minutes, so which boom, 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 a lot of content here. And so the reason why I'm so excited about this is, doing presentations with Portal to Ascension as Portal to Ascension, we've created well over 4,000 to 5,000 events, worked with thousands of presenters, 10,000 hours of content on our website, 3,000 hours for free available now. And when I was doing all these presentations, working with so many people, a lot of people would drop information about Pythagoras. And so I heard so much Pythagoras like here and there, and but no one ever went deep and did a whole deep dive on him. So what I've had the opportunity to do, doing all these presentations with people, is picking on the 1 or 2 things that people talk about and then going deeper in that and doing presentations specifically on those things. So I wanted to know more about this guy that we talk about. Everybody in the conventional world understands Pythagoras as not the founder, but the discoverer, right? The rediscoverer, if you will, of geometry. And a lot of the buildings we have, bridges and all those, are based on his awareness. So it was really interesting for me to figure out how spiritual he was and his esoteric mystery schools and where he got his information from. So I decided to do this deep dive on his life, also to bring some awareness to, the fact that Pythagoras never said that he found all this information himself, but we have now in these days given him a lot of credit. And a lot of people are actually angry at Pythagoras. So I wanted to see if there's any truth to be angry at him. And the reason is that a lot of this information came from India, came from Black Africa, and then all of a sudden this guy Pythagoras gets known for all this information that seemed to have been around for quite some time. So I wanted to see, was he like this egotistical guy going around trying to say to people that I found this information, or did he ever tell us where he got it from? So that was kind of what inspired me to do this. And the truth, the life, and the time. So the truth, as I just stated, the life, the time of Greece, what happened at that time? What was going on before him? What was the environment around him at that time that inspired, him and inspired his way and all the philosophers that came afterwards? And then, of course, the life. So let's get into it. First, we're going to start out with a slide that's not showing up. There we go. A disclaimer. Okay. So many have, and I just kind of touched on a few of them, many have reservations about Pythagoras since he did not discover all the info he shared. Instead, he collected data from other civilizations. His secret society was the foundation of many eventual nefarious societies that took his info for themselves. Some think there is an element of racism due to the credit Pythagoras gets. As much info as I'm about to share with you, there's always aspects that have been lost to time, different perspectives, or factors that cannot be deciphered or may not be uncovered. There is no evidence that Pythagoras said he discovered this information for himself. Continuing the disclaimer here. There's plenty of evidence from his followers and from ancient cultures that he explored of where he gained his info. From a look at his life, he was a peaceful, anti-war, anti-political corruption individual with some fundamental spiritual and dietary beliefs. The society that came after him utilized his awareness for their own agendas, and we'll get into that. This does not mean he was in alignment with what happened after his death. And the reason why I say this is because a lot of his information was actually hijacked by the Roman Catholic Church, the Masonic Society, the Knights Templar. So much of his information was taken for nefarious reasons. And there's actually elitisms and a lot of people within Hollywood, as you're going to see in a moment here, that actually worship Pythagoras. And it's actually a worship around a nefarious agenda, even though himself, there's no evidence to suggest he was actually in alignment with any of that. So some of the sources, Plato, Aristotle, 3 of his people that I'm not going to try to name because I keep messing them up, and the science of sound and frequency, so basically just the science in general of sound and vibration, mystery schools in ancient Indian, Zoroastrian, Egyptian, and Babylonian texts, mathematical and harmonic modern research of ancient structures from around the world that predate Pythagoras' findings. So Pythagoras was known as a philosopher, and he actually was the one that coined the term philosophy. And philos means wisdom, Sophia means truth. So a philosopher was a lover of wisdom and truth. Before Pythagoras, these individuals were actually called sages, and it said Pythagoras came up with this term. And this term was actually used in ancient India as well, the sage. And that goes into the whole connection of, the information that was shared between the Greeks and the Indians. Side note that almost every single Greek god has a corresponding Indian god, except the Indian gods have 1,000 more on top of that, the Indian culture. So there was a lot of similarities and connections between the two cultures. So why Pythagoras? Well, our alphabet, the building around us, the music we hear, the frequencies we use for healing, chakra tuning forks, which I'm sure someone here is selling, collection of ancient cultures into one philosophy. So these are all reasons why I'm choosing this, right? Like even the frequencies from chakra tuning forks are based on him, his what he rediscovered. And mathematics and music is the language of creation, and the universe, the language of God. That's what he believed. And we're now, you've probably heard in school, mathematics is the language of the universe. He brought the knowledge of the world to a practical application. He mentioned extensively in spiritual scriptures and traditions, and the elite worship him. Planets and light exist as harmonic intervals, and every aspect of our modern life. So, all that I said there is going to be shown in what I'm going to show in a few moments here. But yeah, I think here it is. Okay, this is a quote from Pythagoras. So I'm going to drop some quotes throughout this whole thing. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. So we're going to start out with a video, and I got to switch this over here. Any of you guys know who Terrence Howard is? Terrence Howard? You probably recognize him when you see his face here. So let's show you this. Boom.
We're just schmoozing all the reporters at the Emmy, starting out with a happy anniversary to me and Jessica. This was our 11th Emmy red carpet. Yeah. So I think it's safe to say we've had hundreds of red carpet conversations. But we've never had a red carpet conversation quite like this. When Empire debuted on Fox, show was red hot. Now, series star Terrence Howard says when it concludes this season, he's done with acting, and that's not all. We woke to headlines about the conversation this morning. Howard Stern, no less, played the whole thing. Friends in the booth, please drop the crawl at the bottom of the screen. Take it away. Because we've taken what Terrence said, we put the words at the bottom of the screen to see if we can all better understand it. Good luck to all of us. Lucius is in the house. Terrence Howard here. You made huge headlines when you said after you complete these 15 episodes of Empire, you got to walk away for a while or forever.
For good. I mean, everyone keeps trying to tell me, don't say it's forever. But I've spent 37 years pretending to be people so that people can pretend to watch and enjoy what I'm doing when I've made some discoveries in my own personal life with the science that Pythagoras was searching for. I was able to open up the flower of life properly and find the real wave conjugations that we've been looking for 10,000 years. Why would I continue, walking on water for tips when I've got an entire generation to teach a whole new world?
That's a big remark. Yeah. What do you intend to do?
Well, let me put it this way. All energy in the universe is expressed in motion. All motion is expressed in waves. All waves are curved. So where does the straight lines come from to make the platonic solids? There are no straight lines. So when I took the flower of life and opened it properly, I found a whole new wave conjugations that expose the in-between spaces. It's the thing that holds us all together.
Okay.
All right, there's more. I'm not going for it. Right? Yeah. So, for a whole year, there was nothing else after that, but I kept looking him up and typing his name, Pythagoras, for a whole year after this thing, waiting for the moment. And then he did a whole speech for 3 hours to Yale University on this. And he has a website where he's actually showing his research now. And, Yale University, he did it there, but they were so freaking pissed at him because all of these, academics are trying to prove him wrong and thought he was just some crazy celebrity trying to, they went to school for this education. He's just up there throwing this knowledge that they completely did not understand. And so, yeah, just to show you that there's something going on with these elite, and there was a reason why he dropped that knowledge on TV knowing they wouldn't know, right? All right, so now we're going to get into the ancient past, and we're going to talk first about the times of Pythagoras. So Greece, 6th century BC. The scale of Greek warfare increased somewhat in the 6th century BC, when groups of city-states formed alliances. The most famous of these was the Peloponnesian League under the leadership of Sparta. During the Persian Wars, the Delian League emerged under the leadership of Athens. The 5th century BC. So this is in between his lives, right? Beginning and the end of Pythagoras. 6th century, he was born. 5th century, he transitioned. The period of the 5th century BC in classical Greece is generally considered as the beginning in 500 BC and ending in 404 BC, though it is debated. If one looks at the whole Greek world, however, we might place its beginning at the Ionian Revolt in 500 BC that provoked the first Persian invasion of 492 BC. This is all happened, this part happened in the last few years of Pythagoras' life. The classical period was dominated by Athens and the Delian League during the 5th century, but displaced by Spartan hegemony during the early 4th century before power shifted to Thebes and the Boeotian League, and finally to the League of Corinth, led by the Macedon. The Greeks achieved new heights in art, architecture, theater, and philosophy. Democracy in Athens was refined under the leadership of Pericles. This war was a war for freedom, and the Greeks would continue on, free from Persian rule. So it's important to note that all this time, during Socrates' life, during Plato's life, during Pythagoras' life, there was no Greek nation. They were all city-states, and they had a lot of differences, even though they had a common pantheon of gods, and they had a lot of cultural similarities. Actually, entire places in India had the same pantheon of gods, but they had Indian culture not too dissimilar from what we have today. So, and obviously we don't consider those to be a part of the Greek city-states. So there were 1,000 Greek city-states at one point, all basically running like their own countries. In 358 BC, Philip II of Macedonia took on nearby city-states to expand his own territory. He ultimately unified Greece. When Philip was killed, his son, Alexander the Great, took power and then built Greece into an empire. There was no unified Greece until this point. So around 358 BC, just after that, there were only separate townships and city-states shared similar mythologies and culture. So now we're going to talk about Milesian philosophy, because during this time, those wars that were occurring that eventually led to Alexander the Great and the unification of Greece, this is, now we're talking about the foundation of Western philosophy. The foundation of, if you guys took Philosophy 101 in college, this is where it rooted from, Milesian philosophy. Beginning in the 6th century BC, and it's pre-Socratic philosophy, the founders of classical Western philosophy. They were lovers of knowledge and seeking knowledge. They wanted to look behind realities that form the material world we live in. They asked questions like, what is knowledge? How should we govern ourselves? Material monism belief provides an explanation of the physical world by saying that all the world's objects are composed of a single element. So they believe that basically everything that we are, physicality, there was one actual element out of all the elements that was the foundation of it all. Thales, who's known as the Milesian founder, he believed that everything was composed of water. So we call him now a naturist or a materialist. Anaximander and Anaximenes, are the two next people here, were both actually his students. One believed that it was made out of apeiron, which was the infinite or ether. The other one believed it was air. And it's just the sculpture of Thales. So the question that they would ask is, what is the nature of change in the world? Unity and multiplicity. For example, a nature of a dog. There's one dog, but there's also multiple dogs. So how do you reconcile the two? How can there be one dog even though there's a universal concept of a dog? So even though one thing changes throughout its life, like you, myself, we're still the same thing. So these are kind of the questions that they were looking at in the beginning of creating Western philosophy. Is there a unifying factor for all of creation? Thales believed fundamental aspects of creation could be water, since it goes through many changes, liquid, solid, gas. And then the other two things there, basically the students said no, it was infinite. The other one said no, it's air. And then after Milesian philosophy, we have Pythagoras, who, even though he studied with Thales and Thales advised him, they were great friends, and he really was inspired by Milesian philosophy, went down a completely different route. He, in his mathematical quest for more knowledge, Pythagoras, they both contributed much to the study of geometry, but the Milesians looked for something physical. Pythagoras looked at the realm of ideas and numbers as the foundation of all reality. Math was the gateway to understanding all of reality. He devoted himself and his followers to the school of thought, and they attached themselves to one leader, Pythagoras. These guys were called the Pythagoreans. They expanded the work of the Milesians, answering some of their questions using mathematics, harmonics. Mathematics unifies the diversity, including elements and aspects of reality that seem to contradict and are paradoxical. So now we're going to go to Samos, ancient Samos, the birthplace of Pythagoras. Samos is the birthplace of Pythagoras, after whom the Pythagorean theorem is named. The philosophers of Miletus of Samos and Epicurus are also, and the astronomer Aristarchus of Samos, all are from that same place. And Aristarchus of Samos was one of the first in that time, in that area, that said the earth revolves around the sun. Samos traded a lot with Egypt and had influence from Eastern Persia and Babylonian empires. Samos is a Greek island in the East Aegean, just off the coast of modern-day Turkey. It particularly flourished in the 6th century BC and was famous in antiquity for its navy, wine, and important sanctuary to Hera. Samos was an active member of the Delian League and celebrated the philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras. He was born there, and the astronomer that I just mentioned. They hosted both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony in the 1st century BC, and the island slipped away, into obscurity during the Roman imperial period.
Does it still exist?
It does. I think it's a part of Turkey now. I haven't really looked, but it's right off the coast of Turkey.
In the south?
It's just, it's just west. It's not underneath. It's like right west. Anatolia, the whole peninsula there. Here, you can see. I'll show you another map in a second. So Pythagoras, born around 570 BC, there was no extreme descriptive record about him for over 800 years after his birth, mainly due to the arrival of Christianity and many of his teachings becoming exclusively owned by the elite, the Romans and the Freemasons. His father, Monarchus, and his mother, Pythais. After Pythagoras' birth, there's no record of his mother, implying to many people that she actually died, but from my research, there is actually no evidence to suggest that, except for the fact that she vanished, so there's a chance that she did not die. His father, Monarchus, was traveling merchant, and during Pythagoras' childhood took him around the known world to trade and work trips. Pythagoras went to different countries before he even settled in the Greek city-states. For many years as a child, he went to various cultures, and his father tended to adopt and initiate into almost every culture of every place that he went to. The first one being the Zoroastrians. Pythagoras was raised Zoroastrian as a child before he even knew anything about the Greek gods. A Mesopotamian religion and one of the world's oldest continuously practiced faiths, based on the teachings of Zoroaster, a dualistic cosmology of good and evil, predicts the ultimate conquest of evil by good. Some of you might have heard the phrase, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. That was, side note there, Moses actually, when he went through the Mount Sinai area, ran into the Zoroastrians and where they got the information of monotheism from. And so the Zoroastrians are known as the first monotheistic religion. Other documented initiations. The illusions of Attica and Peninsula. So these are the different places that he went and got initiated into and actually became a part of the religion before he even turned 20, before he even ended up back in Greece. The illusion of the Attica Peninsula, the Egyptian mysteries of Thebes, Babylonian mystery schools, the origin of his awareness of the Pythagorean theorem, which I'll get into, cult of Adonis in Syria, the Brahmin mysteries of modern Afghanistan and Hindustan. His dad took him there as a young child on a merchant trip. And they called him in India Yavanshara, the Ionian teacher. Philosopher, mathematician, musician, explorer, and spiritual leader. None of his writings are documented. We don't even have anything from him. No writings of his. But we know of him through his people, his students, those people right there. And then Plato, and then Aristotle also. And even though Aristotle had a lot of reasons not to agree with Pythagoras, still gave him credit and respected him, same as Socrates and other Pythagoreans, his followers. The theory, there was a theory about him. So there's a lot of myths about him at that time because of, we're going to get into his secret societies and mystery schools and all this stuff. And so there's all these things about him. And some people thought he could bilocate. Other people believed he was the son of God or Apollo. And also miraculous conception. His mother and Apollo had a child, and at that point in Greek time, it was actually commonly accepted that the gods could actually have a child with a woman because, it was Zeus and all those, Zeus coming down and all that. So it was actually just a common belief that that could actually happen. So people believe that Pythagoras had miraculous conception with a divine being.
And what year?
This was 570 BC. Well, he was born 570, so like 550 BC. He wanted to abolish elitism, which is very interesting because, as you're going to see, the elite literally have used his awareness to have a chokehold in society. He traveled through Asia Minor and eventually settled in Egypt for up to 20 years. Before he even went to Samos, he had been in Egypt for 20 years. Went back to Samos and lived until about age 35 under the rule of tyrant Polycrates. Around 550 BCE, he went into self-exile from Samos and moved to Croton, Italy, and founded a university there. He left because of the tyrant that was taking over his island. By the age of 55, 20 years later, Pythagoras had gained much political influence in Croton, Italy, and many on the Council 1000 in Croton were against his beliefs.
Where is Croton?
It's in Italy. I'll show you a map in a second here.
No, I mean, where? Italy.
You'll see on the map. It's like south. Yeah. He was tried for criminal conspiracy against the state, and his university was set afire by a mob, and he escaped to Regim, Italy, and then moved to North Italy, where he died from starvation. And we'll get to a slide later on the theories of his death, because there's like 4 of them. So no one knows what really happened to him. One of the stories of his death. So here's the map for you. There's Samos, there's Pythagoras, and there's Croton. And you can see Egypt is actually closer to where Pythagoras was than Croton is. So, you know, there was a lot of trade going on in that time in the Mediterranean. I would say even more than there is now, because, you know, religion and all that. And so back then there was a lot of trade with culture and beliefs, and a lot of the Greek philosophers actually studied in Egypt. And when Alexander the Great created the Library of Alexandria, all the philosophers would go down there and extract information. So health and wellness, because we're at Conscious Life Expo, so we got to talk about health here. And so it's very interesting because he actually abandoned the orthodox diet at the age of 19 or 20, and as the natural and necessary result of his pure living, his sleep was brief, his soul vigilant and pure, and his body confirmed in a state of perfection and invariable health. That's one of his students said about him. He did not taste wine from morning to night, or his principal dish was often kitchen herbs or cooked or uncooked. He was actually a vegetarian / vegan at points, except for the occasional fish that he had. He did not agree with eating flesh of animals because it's necessary for universal peace not to eat animals. Those who encourage the slaughter of animals will not question the killing of man or engaging in war. Fostering a healthy body is a way to ascendance. Inflicting pain on animals is to inflict pain on yourself, since we transmigrate to animals. So there's a story of when Pythagoras actually saw a man beating a dog, and he went up to this man and he basically had him stop and said, "I know this dog, he was a friend of mine, basically in a past life, so you can't beat him." There's a lot of stories of Pythagoras and his beliefs with reincarnation, which wasn't a commonly accepted thing within the Greek, in the Greek culture at that time, but it was accepted in Egypt, Babylon, and India, all places he was documented to have visited. Yeah, and Zoroastrians too, yeah. So here's another quote. "As long as man continues to be the ruthless destroyer of lower living beings, he'll never know health or peace. For as long as men massacre animals, they will kill each other." This one right here is, I just had to throw it in there because it's pretty fun. But also, I personally believe, after like literally trying to go as deep as I could into this bean conspiracy about Pythagoras, that I think this was made up by the people at the time, because there was all these campaigns to discredit him and make him look like a crazy man. And one of them, I think, was this, that he was anti-bean consumption, especially fava beans. Humans and beans spawn from the same source, is what they say about him. Consistently, of bean is like flesh, and when it sprouts, it looks like a human fetus. There's a myth about Pythagoras that he believed when you are flatulent, you lose a part of your soul. I don't think he believed that. There are many myths about Pythagoras due to the immense amounts of ridicule and dislike people had of him. This was the time where vegetarianism in the Greek city-states was not even fathomed. He exhorted those politicians who were legislators to abstain from eating meat, for if they were willing to act justly in the highest degree, it was indubitably incumbent upon them not to injure any of the lower animals, since how could they persuade others to act justly if they themselves were proved to be indulging in insatiable avidity by devouring these animals that are allied to us? For through the communion of life and the same elements and the sympathy thus existing, they are, as it were, conjoined to us by fraternal alliance. So the Pythagoreans, his people, his followers, all of the info that we get from Pythagoras are from his people, from his followers. Most of this awareness is about his group rather than about him. Many of the findings actually about Pythagoras that we know nowadays could have actually been discoveries of his followers after him. They were a religious and ethical sect with a unique views of the universe. They had to take, this is the initiation here, right? They had to take 3 years of introduction, 5 years of silence where they only listened to Pythagoras, and then 5 years of training after that before they could teach his information. They believed the Earth was a sphere, and there were at least 5 planets beyond the Earth. They believed the morning star was Venus, which we know all those cultures I already mentioned already knew. That's where he got it from. He believed in meditation, mantras, self-discipline, and herbs to release and activate parts of the brain. So they would experiment not only on this information, they would extract herbs and I'll say it later, but psychedelics and different types of things and experiment with the level of understanding he could get from the universe to do what he did. Women and men studied together, which was unheard of at the time. Even Plato, who came later and actually loved Pythagoras, had women dress up as men in his school if they wanted to attend. Thena of Croton, his wife, has been rumored to actually have taken over the brotherhood after Pythagoras died. And he believed in the quadrivium, which was the upper division of the medieval education, the liberal arts, which is arithmetic, geometry, arithmetic, numbers in abstract, geometry, numbers in space, music, number in time, and astronomy, numbers in space-time. There is the trivium and there is the quadrivium, which equals the 7 disciplines, which we have over here. And, you can just kind of see that right there. It's basically the stairs to enlightenment and the different levels of awareness you can unlock. Pythagoras' past lives. A couple of his students reports that Pythagoras told people he had lived 4 previous lives that he could remember in detail. The first of these lives was Athalides, the son of Hermes, who granted him the ability to remember his past lives. He lived as a woman, a prostitute named Alco. Pythagoras' past lives he was a fisherman as well. He believed reincarnation was a way to gain experience, knowledge, and therefore wisdom. He also believed he fought with Achilles in the Trojan War. This slide here is about him and his belief specifically on the soul and reincarnation. He believed in the transmigration of the souls. Pre-existing soul is with the gods and inhabits a human body. After death, migrates to another human body. People are soul rather than body instead of the other way around. The soul, now musical intervals, geometry, is a harmony within the body. People have an immortal soul. The soul exists with the gods and then comes to inhabit a body and then continues migrating after death. The soul is imprisoned in the body, death dissolves it, but the soul finds a new body. The idea of life is to escape the wheel that is uncontrollably throwing you through the loop of time, going back to the infinite, unrestrained soul, back to the embodied one.
It's all like Echo.
That's like what?
Echokar, which is from the Zoroastrian.
Yep. And if at length leaving behind thy body thou dost come to the free upper air, and then shalt thou be deathless, a mortal man no more. Humans and animals go back and forth into each other's bodies. There is no hierarchy to reincarnation, he believed. It was all experience. To live a genuine and authentic life will help you escape the wheel and no longer be reincarnated. Human exists to observe the heavens. To exist is to take study of what existence is. We exist for the divine to experience. Pythagoras, as Buddha, they both lived at the same time. That's a whole other presentation that I have actually on all the people that lived around Pythagoras' time and why that happened. Because right when Pythagoras came about was 100 years into the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga starting in 700 BC. And within those 100 years, we have an influx of avatars bringing forward awareness from the age before. And I believe Pythagoras was one of them. So now we'll talk about his university in Croton. In the school, there was entrance leading to a pool where initiates would purify themselves. The building made based on Pythagorean numerology. And you can see here now, Western numerology is based on Pythagoras. And even the numerology in the Bible, the numerology of the Masons and the Illuminati, all based on his numerology. In his building, there were 7 seats per row, which also connects to the 7 stars of the Pleiades, connects to the 7 chakra system. The Greeks were huge into the Pleiades. I actually worked with a lady called Margaret Rigoloso, and we did this whole entire thing on portal dissension, specifically on the Greeks and the Pleiades, which is a mind-blowing thing, and you can check that out on our website. So 7 seats per row, and there were 3 owls leading to the altar, just like Bohemian Grove have the owls. I'm showing you the connections here. There was an owl in Egypt that symbolized mourning and death, and then in Rome, the bringers of death, and then adopted by the Masonic orders. And he was one of the first people at this time using the symbolism, but taken from Egypt, from his, from his travels there. And there were 3 circles of initiation. There was the exoteric, the outside circle, and the second inner circle. The inner order that were required to be vegetarian, and they lived in society with no possessions. The third was the 33 degree. The true esoteric, the inner circle, and they were the elite, the electi is what they were called. This is where the term elite comes from Pythagoras' people, the electi, that were the evolved spiritual ones that knew all the secrets of math and harmonics and the mystery schools. They were split into 2 orders upon his death. Even though there were 2 orders there, they were working in unison. When he died, they became 2 separate factions. In Washington, D.C., we see the number of stairs, pillars, all the elements of governmental structures based on Pythagoras' numerology. Here are the 2 orders of the Pythagoreans. The Acoustematikoi was the first one. They lived an ascetic lifestyle and was said to have not been allowed to see Pythagoras, which is a possible myth because they try to make him look really holier than thou, the people that came after him, just like Jesus. And there's a slide that I hope I get to on how Pythagoras and Jesus could be the same person, or they at least took all of his information and made it about Jesus, because all the stories of Jesus connect to Pythagoras. So he had to live a strict self-disciplinary life, the Acoustematikoi. In Neo-Pythagorean, it included abstinence. And this actually was the foundation of the clergy of the Christian world. The Acoustematikoi, they eventually became Christianized, and all these beliefs that came from his order of the people that had to live this vegetarian, holy lifestyle basically became the foundation for the clergy. And then they had the Mathematikoi. They were privy to the secrets of the universe. They studied philosophy, math, music, astronomy. They went on to form secret societies after Pythagoras' death, continuing his research and sharing the information he acquired. They believed in a search of the divine through numbers and music. And here's the Italy connection. Awareness passed down to the stonemasons that became the Freemasons that were allowed to travel across the Roman Empire and creating structures, roads, etc. So basically, the stonemasons at one point were the only ones that were allowed to travel from nation to nation, even though nations weren't really around at that time, but from area to area. And they would take and the Knights Templar would actually protect them, and because they were the ones that could build structures in society. And the information that they had was Pythagoras' equations on how to build these structures. The stonemasons became the Freemasons. The Freemasons got hijacked, and now here we are. All right. Search of the divine through numbers. Okay, utilize numerology in the creation of structures, especially the structures that the Pythagoreans' descendants used for their own rituals, governing institutions and worship of geometry, music, harmonics, intervals, and Pythagoras. So the 2 orders after his death. We have the Acoustematikoi and the Mathematikoi inherently did not see eye to eye, since they both focus on different aspects of Pythagoras' teachings, and thereby split into their own factions, creating the foundation for many of the secret organizations and religious institutions that began seeking world dominance. All right, before we move on here, we got to take a pause, and now we're going to go and talk about where did he get his information from? Okay, so we know he traveled to Egypt, Babylon, Persia, and Hindustan at least. He was taught arithmetic from the Phoenicians and the Calvinians. They taught him about astronomy. The land of Kemet, which is the name of Egypt before the Greeks changed the name, was a place for Greeks to learn about ancient wisdom. It is even believed that Thales learned geometry from there. He was allowed into mystery schools, and many others were not, such as the mystery schools of Sheshet and Thoth. Scholars would visit him at university and share information with him as well, his own university. People from around the world knew about him. They would come from all over the world to share their findings, and he would compile them together into a practical application. In his life, he was eventually appointed head of education in Croton, and herbs, psychedelic plants, meditation, experiments, and mantras all contributed to his own knowledge. He was also deeply into triangles, and the tetractys, which is this right here, is a symbol that was also taken and used for symbology in other societies. And in here we have 10 dots that together form a larger triangle. Pythagoras was encoded with a lot of symbolism. This is the direct connection to the pyramid of the following of the secret societies. The first dot is the source or God. The 2 dots below is the creation of physicality and matter and the duality. The 3 dots is the union of the active and passive principles. The trinity, marriage of masculine and feminine in the cosmos, equaling the child. The 4 dots represents the liberal arts, sciences of the world, and in the Middle Ages, this was really commonly used, the quadrivium, these 4 disciplines here. And then, of course, we have the Pythagorean theorem that was anything but Pythagoras's. They actually revere the pentagram, the Pythagoreans, because each diagonal divides the other 2 at the golden ratio, and became demonized as Christianity flourished and was hijacked, became a symbol for secret societies connected to mathematics and geometry rather than demonic force. That's what it was, rather than demonic force. And here is the foundations of Western numerology. There's perfection in numbers. All can be represented in numbers, and God, source, universe is a harmonic vibrational number system. They believe that the number 10 was a perfect number, and they try to find it throughout the world around them. Even numbers are infinitely divisible, and odd is not. Use numerology in everything, from the stairs you'd walk up to the rows of chairs in your room. In Pythagoras, everything was intentional. And he learned this from Egypt, which I hope I'm going to get into. Yes, I have time. Defined different aspects of virtuous living in terms of numbers. Justice is 4. He believed the justice was the number 4. And marriage, a divine union, is 5. 3 is masculine, 2 is feminine, 5 equals a divine union, because those numbers come together. Directly taken from Kemetic knowledge in Egypt. In music and harmony, music can be expressed in terms of numbers and length. Mathematics is harmony. So if you look at, who here has heard that math is the language of the universe? Probably almost everybody here? Yeah. So the mathematics and musical intervals are one and the same. Universe is literally named after one verse. Like even the term is universe, the one verse, the one celestial song. So the mathematic part is the analytical mind, the linear mind, the masculine side. The music is the exact same thing described through the creative, the feminine mind, but the same intervals exist. So he realized that mathematics is the linear way of looking at the music, which is the harmonious way, and he was trying to figure out how to put them together. So from his research and looking into harmonics and frequencies, he discovered geometry. Through sand plate experiments, through having different types of instruments playing sounds, and then all of a sudden geometry would come out, and then he would test the geometry, and it would stand up to basically build structures. For his research and looking into frequency, vibration, and there was a quote from him saying that he wanted to find the frequency of God. That was his initial reason for his university, and he wanted to find the frequencies to cure the passions of the psyche: anger, hate, lust, greed. He knew that there was a vibration that could help heal this. And by doing that, he discovered what we now use to create society. If everything is in harmony and in the right pitch, you can unify contradicting forces, he believed. Energies of spirits unify the opposites. The law of opposites also came from him. To have the perfect tone and harmony, he wanted to find out how to use harmonics to cure passions of the psyche. There is a perfect harmony for health. The mind needs to be in harmony to have balance. When you do not eat well or overeat, you disrupt your body's harmony. All medical problems are a form of lack of harmony. He believed that the triangle represented harmony. The soul is the harmony within the body. The third point being the integration point. So you have the triangle. The triangle, without the third point, you have the line. The line is linearity, duality, beginning and end, duality, linear time. When you have the triangle, you have a third point, which is the balance between the linearity, and you now have the integration point. So it's like you no longer have duality, but you have a centered harmony. So the whole concept of us existing now is us to find the third point within the duality so that we can live in a harmonious state while we still exist within duality. And that was part of his research. There must be a harmony between these opposites ideas in the universe. The truth of Pythagoras. Pythagoras considered that music contributed greatly to health. He called his method musical medicine. To the accompaniment of Pythagoras, his followers would sing in unison certain chants. I'm going to skip the rest because I said that there. Now we're jumping forward to music research and the Western music scale. How did we get to the Western music scale? Pythagoras combined his research to publicly display the correspondence between simple ratios of string length and constant music intervals. According to legend, Pythagoras discovered the foundations of musical tuning by listening to the sounds of 4 blacksmith hammers, which produced consonance and dissonance when they were struck simultaneously. Probably a myth, a story. A lot of stories came up about him. I feel he actually did some research and, this using the monochord and different things to find out these intervals. Pythagoras' research led him to discovering that a string exactly half the length of another will play a pitch that is exactly an octave higher when struck or plucked. Split a string into thirds, you raise the pitch an octave and a fifth. Split into fourths, you go even higher. Actually, all of that was really commonplace in Egypt at that time. So he didn't even have to look deeply. If he was in Egypt for 20 years, he's definitely going to come across all that. So this video is not playing, so I'll play the next one. But this kind of talks about the 7 muses in Greek myths, where the 7 planets singing together, creating a celestial harmony, which most likely connects to the 7 stars of the Pleiades, which ancient Greece and Egypt both had a huge connection with, and Babylon. In ancient Egypt, there were 7 goddesses represented by 7 cows, composed by the celestial herd, provides the nourishment to her worshippers, and that's why we have the 7 rows in his actual university that people would sit within, was connected to that number. There we go. Now something that's completely not about Pythagoras. No, I was kidding. Here, let me pull up this video. Okay.
Do you know anything about the map that was found by the Norsemen of Pythagoras?
No, I didn't. Did not know that. There we go.
Where they could all live
Mm-hmm.
with safety, and it was done by the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And like Milano met Milan, which is close to the place he
Can you share the resources with me so I can look into that? Or tell me afterwards, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, because I have a lot of content I want to go through.
Pi is equal to 3.141592653589.
I'm not going to go into this right now, but there's a whole entire presentation that can be done about Walt Disney and its connection to Pythagoras and the secret societies. So this right here kind of just shows you a little bit of, a lot of that information that he put into his cartoons.
9747, etc., etc., etc.
Hello, Donald.
That's me. Where am I?
Mathemagic Land.
Mathematic land? Never heard of it.
It's the land of great adventure.
Now, who are you?
I'm a spirit, the true spirit of adventure.
That's for me. What's next?
A journey through the wonderland of mathematics.
Mathematics? That's for eggheads.
Eggheads? Now hold on, Donald. You like music, don't you?
What?
Well, without eggheads, there would be no music. Come on. Let's go to ancient Greece, to the time of Pythagoras, the master egghead of them all.
Pythagoras?
The father of mathematics and music.
Mathematics and music?
Ah, you'll find mathematics in the darndest places. Watch. First, we'll need a string. Stretch it good and tight. Plunk it. Now divide in half. Plunk again. You see? It's the same tone, 1 octave higher. Now divide the next section. And the next. Pythagoras discovered the octave had a ratio of 2 to 1. With simple fractions, he got this. And from this harmony in numbers developed the musical scale of today.
By golly, you do find mathematics in the darndest places.
You can imagine how excited Pythagoras was when he shared his findings with his pals, a fraternity of eggheads, known as the Pythagoreans. They used to meet in secret to discuss their mathematical discoveries. Only members were allowed to attend. They had a secret emblem, the pentagram. Let's see what the topic is for today. jam session.
Give me something with a beat.
So from these eggheads, the Pythagoreans, with their mathematical formula, came the basis of our music of today.
Pythagor, boy, put it down. Well, I'll be a punch-slug egghead.
It was our old friend.
You guys could watch the whole thing if you want. It's 27 minutes. Donald Duck in Math Magic Land on YouTube. So music, geometry, bridges, architecture, you know, that's so much. That's why I wanted to really go deep into it, because the foundation of what a lot of people who aren't even into all the stuff that we're talking about here, Pythagoras, you know, he supported the whole world as we know it. And he was really conscious, really into a lot of what we're sharing here. And, you know, a lot of these great people are that actually were the founders of society, were really deep into some deeply esoteric awareness. All right, so the music of the spheres, so we're gonna get into that now. So Pythagoras, he theorized that all things have a frequency, and even each planet has its own vibration and musical tones. The tone depends on the distance from the sun and the speed of its orbit through the ether. He called the sound each celestial body made in our solar system collectively the music of the spheres. Earth was a sphere, and it was not flat like Thales believed. At least 5 planets were outside of Earth, he believed, and the morning star was Venus, and also a heliocentric model of the planets rotating around the sun. Maybe the planets were not exactly rotating themselves, but instead they are pulling by gravitons. He theorized this, that they were being pulled by something called gravitons, and the gravitational waves of the orbital cycles drag the planets along with them. Very, very much ahead of his time for the Western world at that point. Which is interesting because the Eastern world was only like 100 miles to the east of him, you know? So it's like, or like directly south in Egypt. So, but the Western world was not accepting this. Thought is an idea in transit, which when once is released, can never be lured back, nor can be spoken. Can the spoken word be recalled? Nor can ever the advert act be erased. All that thou thinkest, sayest, doest, stays in perpetual record for itself, enduring in eternity. Music of the spheres. So these are videos that I'm not going to pull up because I want to get into Egypt and other places, but you can look up online just to show you that Pythagoras is right. Each of the celestial bodies does make a sound. At that point, no one had gone out into space except for maybe the people that gave the Egyptians what they knew. And, you know, so he thought that everything vibrated, therefore they had a resonant frequency. So these videos that you can look up online, typing in sounds of Jupiter, typing in Saturn sounds, typing in moon sounds, you'll hear the frequencies. And I actually meditate to Jupiter's one sometimes. It's pretty beautiful, especially because Jupiter is Zeus, the connection to Greece. And then the sound of Saturn is extremely eerie. And the sounds of Saturn's rings are a different sound than actually Saturn itself. And the moon sounds, you know, you hear the moon sound, but then you also hear all the radio waves from Earth bouncing off it. So it's this combination of the moon and the radio frequencies coming off the moon. But each of them make sounds. Some of them make audible sounds. Some of them are inaudible, but we have the technology these days to actually convert them into audible frequencies. So, you know, a lot of people I know, work with, and others actually get these sounds and put them in their like meditation music, binaural beats, things like that. All right, guys, drum roll, please. The moment we've all been waiting for. The Pythagorean knot theorem, crossed out for a reason. This is where it's all leading up to, the Pythagorean theorem. So this is the one that there's a lot of controversy around. I don't know if you guys know about this, but there is. And it's because a lot of people that are awoken to this awareness are wondering where Pythagoras didn't get this information. He didn't find it. Where did it come from? So the next few slides are us going to be looking into if there's evidence to find where he actually found it. So there's no doubt that this theorem originated from other ancient civilizations. It's not even hard to look and find and discover this stuff, because some people just blatantly say he didn't find this from somewhere else, but they don't realize if you do a simple search, you can just come out with epic amounts of awareness and information, including scriptures that predate Pythagoras that had it right there in plain sight. So it's not like, did he discover it, did he not? No, he didn't discover it. But then, like I said in the disclaimer in the beginning, he never said he discovered anything, you know? So there is an Egyptian connection to the placement of the pyramids. That one's the most mind-blowing one. A tablet from ancient Babylon. The Chaldeans, 626 BC and 539 BCE in the Babylonian Empire also talk about this. 800 to 400 BCE, we see evidence in the sutras in northern India. All places that Pythagoras is documented to have traveled to. In Babylon, we have the tablet called Plimpton 322, and you can see it in the back right there. The Plimpton 322 is a Babylonian clay tablet notable as containing an example of Babylonian mathematics. This tablet, believed to have been written about 1800 BC, has a table of 4 columns and 15 rows of numbers in the cuneiform script of the period. The table lists 2 of the 3 numbers in what is now called the Pythagorean triples. We have a squared, b squared equals c squared. A method for constructing such triples is a significant early achievement of humanity known long before the Greeks. But one thing you gotta give to Pythagoras is a lot of this information wasn't used in practical, even in these ancient cultures. They had scriptures passed down from thousands of years before them that were in their text that they weren't even using. Pythagoras went around and he got this information, compiled it together, and started teaching it in the university and doing experiments on what they can do in order to use this in day-to-day life. And here is what the Plimpton 322 tablet looks like. And just for fun, I just threw in a little Google Map image of how long it would take him to walk to where the tablet was. Not too far in those days, So this one right here now is talking about the Egyptian connection to the Pythagorean theorem, and this is my favorite video here. I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to probably stop it during and make some comments. And I got to say also that you'll hear in here that this person kind of is a little upset at Pythagoras because people say that he took it. So this is one of the examples of people kind of not down with the fact that people named it after him. So just take that with a grain of salt.
Pythagoras theorem. The African origin of the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras was a Greek philosopher who is said to have lived around 500 BC, and is credited by most Western educational institutions with the development of what they call the Pythagorean theorem, the mathematic equation which expresses the relationship between the sides of a right triangle, where the square of the hypotenuse of the triangle is equal to the sum of the squares of the other 2 sides of the triangle. The Pythagorean theorem is also known as the 47th problem of Euclid, because Euclid, who is said to have lived several hundred years after Pythagoras, and is called the father of geometry by Western educational institutions, worked on solving the ratio 3-4-5 Pythagorean triple. If the first 5 numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, are squared to yield 1, 4, 9, 16 and 25, then subtracting each square from the next yields the sequence 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. However, it has long been suspected that the Pythagorean theorem, and the proof of the Pythagorean theorem, existed thousands of years before Pythagoras is said to have been born. Evidence contains tables inscribed with Pythagorean triples. In his collection of essays entitled Moralia Volume 5, the Greek essayist Plutarch comments on the ancient Egyptians' knowledge of the 3-4-5 Pythagorean triple, and its relationship to the sides of a right triangle expressed in ancient Egyptian symbolism by saying, "The upright, therefore, may be likened to the male, the base to the female, and the hypotenuse to the child of both, and so Asar may be regarded as the origin, Aset as the recipient, and Heru as perfected result. 3 is the first perfect odd number, 4 is a square whose side is the even number 2, but 5 is in some ways like its father, and in some ways like its mother, being made up of 3 and 2. In the book Stolen Legacy by George G. M. James, it is argued that Pythagoras was shown proof of the theorem by the ancient Egyptians. It states, Pythagoras traveled to Egypt and was taught geometry by the Egyptian priests, and made to sacrifice to the gods, before they showed him the proof of the theorem of the square of the hypotenuse of a right-angled triangle. Pythagoras did not discover this proof, and it is misleading to name the theorem after him. The book Stolen Legacy also states, "We have the statements of Plutarch, Demetrius, and Antisthenes, that Pythagoras founded the science of mathematics among the Greeks, and that he sacrificed to the Muses, when the Egyptian priests explained to him the properties of the right angle."
So, quick comment here. Another comparison to Jesus is that all of his disciples are the ones that basically said he came up with it, even though he never did. And we actually have evidence that Jesus went around the world as well and got a lot of information from India, and a lot of Gnostic beliefs in the beginning of Christianity was actually based on other cultures. But then after he passed away, all of a sudden we have his followers that just loved him so much, saying that it was all him. So we see here that his followers are basically doing the same thing. He passed away. He never said it was his, but then all the people that missed him and loved him so much started saying that, he was the one that discovered it all.
Triangle. Pythagoras was also trained in music by the Egyptian priests. The proof attributed to Pythagoras is very simple, and is called a proof by rearrangement. The two large squares shown in the figure, each contain 4 identical triangles, and equating the area of the white space yields the proof attributed to Pythagoras. Pyramids of Giza, the 3 giant triangular structures built by the ancient Africans in Egypt 2,000 years before Pythagoras was said to have been born.
So we went around the world, now we're in Egypt, and I'm going to go back here because this is an important part. This is basically the evidence of the Pythagorean theorem in Egypt, which, the other ones say he was taught it by the Egyptian priests, and, things that we can't really prove except for maybe it was documented by someone. Now this is actual physical evidence.
The 3 giant triangular structures built by the ancient Africans in Egypt 2,000 years before Pythagoras was said to have been born. From above, if we rearrange the pyramids of Giza, we see evidence of the proof of the theorem. The base of Menkare's pyramid is 51.7 cubits, the base of Khafre's pyramid is 107.6 cubits, and the base of Khufu's pyramid is 115.2 cubits. Plugging into the equation, we see that the map...
Also, the symbol for the Masonic necklace. That is their symbol, and I had that image earlier. Exactly that, with the G in the middle.
Mathematical result, 119.4, is a statistically significant reasonable approximation, a difference of 4.2 cubits, only 3.5% error. Considering that the outer casing of the Giza pyramids have been removed, and the wear and tear on the pyramids over the thousands of years, then this may account for the discrepancy. Given this evidence, it does not seem right to use the term Pythagorean theorem for a concept which existed thousands of years before Pythagoras.
That's it for that one. Yeah, I mean, the 3 pyramids in the Giza Plateau, you rearrange them, it's the Pythagorean triangle. I don't know, my mind was blown when I found that one out. I don't see minds blowing anywhere, guys, come on now. Speechless, alright, I get it. Alright, so the rich black soil of the Nile, we're going to Egypt now, guys. The rich black soil of the Nile Valley, and just in case I don't have time later, I'm just going to say this now since we're talking about Egypt. As Joan said earlier, we're taking 2 groups of people to Egypt in September, and we have flyers over here for those tours. And we're going with JJ and Desiree Hertak, and it's going to be epic. So if you guys are interested, come check out the flyers there. All right. So the rich black soil of the Nile Valley gave Egypt its ancient name Kemet, or Black Land. The conquest of the Greeks resulted in a mispronunciation of the capital city of Memphis. So they thought they heard Egyptos when the capital city of Memphis was told to them. So they ended up calling the whole place Egyptos. They called themselves Remet in Kemet, which means people of the Black Land. The term refers to the rich soil found in the Nile River and Delta. The ancient Kemetic people were possibly a different race. So there's a couple of theories now. There's a lot of people that believe ancient Egyptians were black Africans, right? And then there's those that believe that there were a completely different race that came from Atlantis that was a race, just like, I'm from India, my race of people are Indians. Just like a separate race entirely that, Robert Schock, another guy we work with, is going to be at our conference in San Diego. He did the geological studies of the Sphinx and has now dated back the Sphinx through erosion to at least around 11,900 BC. which is around 6,000 years earlier than we've been told. And which is also at the end of the Younger Dryas period, the end of the last ice age, when there's a huge flood, Noah's flood around the whole planet, a collective trauma that we all seem to have experienced. And when this flood occurred, there was basically a migration into North Africa, the whole of North Africa, including the Sahara Desert. And the Sahara Desert at that point was a lush oasis, green oasis. There was an ice age before. The northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere frozen over. The best place to live around the whole place was like a few hundred miles north and south of the equator, including Morocco, all through the Sahara Desert, into Egypt. Egypt was actually the whole of North Africa, the Kemet, and the most unexcavated place in the world, the Sahara Desert. And it's also the largest unexcavated area in the world. And the reason why they don't excavate there is because they're like, oh, there was nothing there. It's been a desert for so long. Plus, even when it wasn't a desert 13,000 years ago, we were so primitive there would be nothing there. That's the reason given. However, now we have LiDAR technology and we have really amazing people that are doing independent things, crowdfunding campaigns to go there. So pretty soon, I got a feeling hardcore that the Sahara Desert is going to be partly one of the biggest reasons we rewrite our history. And it's going to be connected to the migration out of Atlantis to Egypt. So, ancient, where was I? So, yeah, the two races. So, was it a different race? Was it black Africans, right? And so, there's a lot of people I work with. One people believe one thing, another one believes another. And then some of them, if there was another race, that race eventually, as we devolved in consciousness and came down multiple cycles, because in 13,000 BC, we're 4 cycles from here. We're in the Satya Yuga, we went into the Dwapara Yuga, we went into the Treta Yuga, the Golden, Silver, Bronze, and the Kali Yuga. 4 ages of devolution. The amount of things that occurred in that area during that time, the amount of people that came through, the wars that occurred. At the end of every Yuga cycle was a great war. The Trojan War occurred, the Mahabharata occurred at the end of those times, included these whole areas. So what happened to these people? Were they some separate race that eventually became a part of our races on Earth? You know, I'm going off of mad tangents right now, but like, you know, then we have different types of bloodlines in North Africa, like the Berber people that have the blue eyes, that have a completely different genetic genome compared to anybody else in that area. You know, so was that race around, and can we track it? That's the question. All right, Pythagoras in Egypt. Studied at Memphis in Egypt, he was welcomed, especially due to his ideas of mathematics and awareness gained from around the world. It is believed he lived there anywhere from 10 to 20 years. Egypt was on its way out as a world power, and the Greek cities were on their rise. Many Greek minds would travel to learn from ancient archives. And Pythagoras was initiated into at least 3 mystery schools, the school of Thoth, Sheshet, and Ptah. And now here we go, Sheshet and Thoth. Has anybody here heard of Sheshet? She is the unspoken goddess. And when I found out about Sheshet, like I went on deep in the rabbit hole about her. So the pre-dynastic period in ancient Egypt is the time before recorded history from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic age, and on the rise of the first dynasty is generally recognized as spanning this era 6000 to 3150 BCE. Even though the physical evidence now suggests it was actually further back. Pythagoras must have gained a lot of information from the mystery schools of Thoth and Sheshet. Sheshet worshipped, so these dates have 100% been shifted. So you can probably add a few thousand years to these dates. So it says 3150 BCE to 2613 BCE, which is also in alignment with the end of the Treta Yuga and the beginning of the Dwapara Yuga. You see a lot of changes in the worshipping of different gods right at the end of one Yuga cycle and beginning of another one. Thoth worship was said to date back at least 6,000 years, but actually evidence is now suggesting Sheshet was worshipped before Thoth, that there was a time where the goddess was actually preliminary deity in ancient Egypt. So, and we see Thoth also being worshipped all the way up until the Greek conquest. So the reason why, you know, we heard the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, you have a lot of people speaking on Thoth, is because he actually lasted all through the patriarchal age up until modern time. And all the credit has been given to this guy. Sheshet is not considered as important in Kemetic history as she really was, and that was because the fall from worshiping the goddess to being specifically masculine-dominated patriarchal. We've heard also stories of Thoth being the Atlantean, right? And Sheshet was actually his counterpart. So if Thoth was an Atlantean, so was Sheshet. They actually traveled together. And what we see in a lot of ancient scriptures is that a lot of these people, they say that they're either lovers or they're brother and sister, one or the other or both. So Shesheth was responsible for these disciplines: writing, astronomy, mathematics, geometry, medicine and botany, weights and measures, architecture, knowledge and science. All topics that Pythagoras was extremely interested in. Which was why he was initiated into this specific mystery school. There were female male counterparts, and she invented writing and Thoth taught it. So this is really, really interesting. We hear all this stuff about Thoth, but everything that Thoth actually taught humanity, he wasn't the founder of the discipline. Shesheth was the one that created it all. Out of Atlantis, there was a fall from grace. We went from a telepathic age to an age where we started writing things down, and then all of a sudden we see hieroglyphs. As we were devolving, the tools that we had at these higher ages needed to be translated in the age that we're currently at. So we had to go from communicating telepathically in order to communicating with writing, and eventually creating tools like the Ankh and different things like that to keep our frequencies at a certain level, including creating pyramids to create energy generating devices to keep the ley lines of the planet from crashing, which didn't work out. And there's a video from another person I work with. His name is Brian Forrester, and he's in the Red Pyramid. You can type in Brian Forrester Red Pyramid on YouTube, and he shows evidence of an explosion that occurred at the end of one Yuga cycle in the pyramids. So they overpowered. Something happened to these pyramids. So I'm getting like really excited now, guys. So I'm like running out. All right. So she invented writing, and Thoth taught it to humanity. The old gods became less popular, and Shesheth and Thoth rose during this time. Shesheth instructed Thoth on how to teach humanity. She seemed to have received divine revelation or ancient wisdom, or be the creator of these disciplines, and Thoth was the instructor. Everything in Egypt, so I've been in Egypt for like 15 years. Yes, sir.
Were they long lifers?
Did they live a long time? Oh, I believe they did. I mean, out of Atlantis, there's no actual evidence of, how long they lived on any of these scriptures or hieroglyphs, But yeah, I mean, some people still think Thoth's around, and that his spaceship is underneath the Sphinx. That's a whole other story too. So everything in Egypt is straight up intentional. So I was into Egypt for 15 years, and then my COVID research study was deep dive on Pythagoras and a few other things. And when I went deep into it, I was like, oh my God, I need to go to Egypt. I never wanted to go until this moment. Everything in Egypt is intentional. Every brick, every rock, every distance, everything. Egypt is the creation of, if the world ever got reset again, Egypt has everything you need to know to rebuild everything, including how to go to other planets, including the distance from one star to another star. The amount of bricks in one building is the same light years from here to Sirius. Like, the angle of Thoth's staff on every hieroglyph in Egypt is the tilt of the Earth's axis, right? Like, it's just so incredible. And we're going to be like going deep into this when we're in Egypt, looking at it from that aspect. So Thoth's staff are the same, but it's interesting because the angle is actually the other angle, other side of Earth, like there was a pole shift or something. So it's symbolizing the angle in the opposite way that it currently is, but it has the same 23.5 degrees. So Thoth's staff, same angle to the Earth. The gap between the two staffs is 6 degrees, which is the same as the Masonic symbol. So then this symbol was even taken, and the Masonic symbol right there is actually the same as Thoth's staff. 23.5 degrees, the same as the Earth's axis. That right there, that Masonic necklace, that's the 3 bases of the pyramids with the Pythagorean triangle. And there's a quote right there from Plato would have above his school, he would have, "Let no one ignorant of geometry enter my door." And then we even have the pyramid on the dollar bill. Thoth's staff, 23.5 degrees, Earth's axis. And if you really want to go deep down rabbit holes, SGD Sacred Geometry Decoded on YouTube. 3-hour presentation just on this. Like, it just goes so deep. The symbolism was too much. I had to stop watching. It was just too much. I was like, no, how am I going to tell the world? The Sarian, next to the Temple of Seti, first in Abydos. So the ancient structures in Egypt, the really ancient ones, we see no hieroglyphs. When we get into the more modern ones, we see hieroglyphs, or we see hieroglyphs that are over even more ancient drawings and scriptures, but the language wasn't there on the ancient structures. The Sphinx, the pyramids, the Temple of Osirion. But on the Temple of Osirion, there's no hieroglyphs except for an etched, lasered in, etched flower of life, symbolizing geometry. Geo meaning earth, metry meaning measure, measuring earth. The Temple of Seti the First in Abydos also has the Pythagorean triangle, a squared, b squared, c squared. And then this one here, I'm not even going to try to explain it because it's been too long since I watched the video. But this connects to, I mean, if you take a picture of it and look at it later, or go to SGD encoded, this is how, like, you can kind of see. So basically, the degrees on here end up equaling the scale here that's based on different distances between pyramids within Egypt that eventually gives you the notes for each chakra, for each, thing on the scale, C, G, D, A, E, B, which gives you the frequencies that we have in the chakra forks now. 256, 192, 432 hertz equals A. So that was all in Egypt. Pythagoras brought it out to the masses. Just to go a little deeper on how intentional everything is there. There even is this symbol that is, you see it on top of Sheshet. And after a yuga cycle, the symbol started changing and it went from 14 degrees to 45 degrees. And it was a distortion of like some more ancient knowledge. And if you get this symbol and you put it right at the bottom, like where that Caffrey Valley temple is, and you can see kind of right here. So you get this right here, you put it right here, and each of these are 14 degrees. You go out every single way, and every single one of them is like a summer solstice, equinox, all the equinoxes and solstices, and then in between are the actual pyramids. So this was actually an ancient calendar for if we reset humanity to know how to calculate where the equinoxes and all that is, and what the degrees of separation are of each of these events. So just another thing that they just put in beautiful art, just like the level of genius of these people that created this society is just incredible. You can see here from a bird's eye view. Oh, we actually made it pretty good here. Almost done. Okay, this awareness was utilized to build society and civilization, as well as exert control over the masses in the Roman Empire. The Vatican and secret societies, Heron's book and the Library of Alexandria, and they even moved obelisks to Rome. So all this awareness was eventually taken over. And now we get into the end is near, which means the theories of how Pythagoras died. Multiple myths and theories about his final years. There was a war between Croton and Cerberus that ended in 510 BC. Might as well have been a war against democracy and tyranny at that point. Pythagoras was losing support with some of his individuals in the Council of 1000 in Croton, where he was the head of education, because of his vegan belief style and lifestyle, and believing everything was numbers and music, and how he had really devout religious followers, and people were scared of him. Namely, Cylon, which was one of the people in the council, rallied support against Pythagoras, stating his ideas were against freedom and liberty. This possibly came from dietary recommendations and his math and music and God, because he was actually really for freedom and liberty. Cylon attempted to be initiated into the Pythagorean order at one point, and Pythagoras actually denied him. So some people think that he was just like kind of upset. In 509 BC, a meeting house where Pythagoreans were convened was set on fire. Many Pythagoreans were said to have died in the fire. So here are the 4 theories of how he died. Theory 1. He fled into another place in Italy to start teachings over again. There's no record of this, so people think that he just vanished and he started all over. Theory 2, stayed in Croton after the war to try to rebuild Croton, also no record. Theory 3, fled from the fire, escaped to Metopotam, Italy, and died of starvation. And then the last theory was chased into a bean field where he was stabbed to death, which I think is a myth. There's also a Google map of like that place where they say that he went to and died. So after his death, there was Neo-Pythagoreans, the 1st century BCE after the 2nd century, during same years as after Jesus, right after Yeshua. And these apostles, the acousmatikoi of Pythagoras, were somewhat lost in society and looking for answers. So after his death, the acousmaticoi of Pythagoras were kind of looking for answers. Their leader, had gone. They dug up Pythagoras' work and brought it back to life. They refined the idea of God and made some alternations. They began creating different rituals for worshiping gods, such as abstinence and other rules, which became the basis for early Christianity. All ideas Pythagoras was not known to have supported. Numerology and superstitions around numbers began spreading after Pythagoras' death on the same numbers that he actually was really fond of. There were good numbers and they became bad numbers at this point, where he didn't say that there was any good or bad. They were all just neutral, if anything, more positive than negative. Quite possibly, the origin of demonization of 13 and 666 came out of this. After his death, the Byzantines' use of harmonics pulled from Pythagorean esotericism, their octaves and the effect of mysticism of the mind to call forth higher energies of entities. Kabbalist scholars also mixed up Neo-Pythagoreanism into their order because they were fixed on the number 10 being really important to them. Numerology and numbers in the Bible directly come from numerology of Pythagoras. Kabbalah means to receive. Kabbalists seek to receive the knowledge of God. Kabbalists believe in reincarnation, believe there are 10 fundamental forces, 10 Sephirot. These 10 Sephirot flow from God and his creation. God continues to create by combining the 10 Sephirot. All right. So Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. Plato was 100% behind Pythagoras' awareness. He adopted it and expanded on the awareness. His teacher Socrates was not all for Pythagorean, but he did respect him. Socrates believed that Pythagoras focused too much on numbers and the universe rather than immediate problems of mankind, which is very interesting because Pythagoras' numbers is how we created the world today, right? So Socrates thought that it wasn't really going to help us. Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato all used aspects of Pythagoras' work for their own. Little documentation of this, but definitely evidence in their research and respect and acknowledgement that they gave Pythagoras. And then the law of opposites was something that Aristotle created. We don't see any evidence of the law of opposites from Pythagoras' time. Then all of a sudden, a few hundred years later, Aristotle talks about it, and he got this directly from Pythagoras. All right, this is it. This is the one. The connection, so as I was doing this presentation, I did this whole entire presentation, and then after I was done, I was like, there's too many similarities to Jesus and Pythagoras here. Let me see what the similarities are and if there's any connections, especially because the acousmaticoi and the mathematicoi literally became the premise for the secret societies and the clergy of Christianity, right? Directly after him. So is it possible that some of these stories of Pythagoras' life was actually taken and used in Jesus' life? And that's also another presentation. Like, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this guy could have lived, but a lot of the stories that he had were adopted from other people and other stories from the ancient past, including Krishna's life. So Pythagoras' life and the life of Yeshua have too many coincidences not to be mentioned. Both were known as the Son or the Son of God, or the Son God themselves, because that was the whole Council of Nicaea thing. Is Jesus the Son of God? Is he God himself, or is he a man that became enlightened? Both had followers that were like apostles that went to spread the knowledge after death. The acousmaticoi and mathematicoi can be argued to be the precursors for the clergy and the secret orders like the Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and the Knights Templar. They both never claimed to produce all the awareness to share themselves. Instead, their followers attested and began worshiping them after their death on an extreme fundamental level. Both taught about reincarnation, and that goes into the Gnostic text of the Book of Reincarnation, and the resurrection of Christ, which is a symbolism for the immortal soul. Both never wrote down anything themselves. Their apostles did all the writing. They both were known to walk on water and be able to bilocate. Both of their information was utilized and adopted by the elite. They were both, the Council of Nicaea, the Romanization, the Roman Catholic Church. All this information ended up becoming a part of the political structure. They were both anti-elitism and believed in equality. Parthenis, Pythagoras' mother, means young woman. So actually the virgin doesn't mean like just someone who hasn't had sex and is a virgin. It also means a young woman. So the translation, Margaret Riegel also talks about this as well, that a lot of the translations that we have that we've actually put on Jesus and his life could actually have been translated as something different because they had multiple meanings. including the word virgin was actually meant young woman, didn't really mean someone that had maybe miraculous conception or a baby without, mating with someone. Many texts refer to Parthenis having a virgin birth, and again, I said Margaret's name there. It was common in Greek in those days to believe the gods would interbreed with the humans. An order of priestesses, so now to talk about the possibility of virgin births, there was actually an order of priestesses, and it's on our YouTube channel. If you look up Miraculous Conception on our YouTube channel, Portal to Ascension, we talk about the order of priestesses. There was a group of priestesses around the world that actually had rituals and that they would do in order to pull in births into their wombs to have virgin births. And Margaret Rioloso actually teaches and shows people the scriptures of what they would do in order to pull it in. So basically, the womb is a portal from another dimension. You're literally pulling in a soul. So they would go through these rituals in order to pull in a specific soul intentionally rather than randomly and abstractly. And when you look into all these priestesses schools, you start seeing that the souls and the things that they were connecting to were specifically Pleiades. There was this whole Pleiadian connection in ancient Greece and all these mystery schools that they were pulling in souls from there. So it's one of the theories as well, and it's also Pleiadian connection to Pythagoras and his number was 7 and all that, that his mother was a part of this mystery school, this priestess school, that was pulling in a soul from the Pleiades intentionally, basically bringing down an awakened avatar from that reality. They had rituals and policies around what was considered a virgin at that point. And you could be restored to a virgin state. So what does this all mean as we close out here? What does all of that ancient history mean for this now moment? The Pythagoreans believe mathematics and music are spiritual. However, when the scientific revolution occurred, only the mathematical components of this research was resurrected, because the Neo-Pythagoreans came around 15, 16, 1700. Newton, Galileo, individuals around those times started coming out with very linear-minded sciences. And they started these individuals were actually very atheist. And the reason why they were atheists was because they had just been controlled by the Catholic Church or not at that point, already been fragmented, but the church and Christianity for so long that science was so shadowed by all of these religious beliefs that they actually decided to completely get rid of religion and spirituality and come directly from a linear perspective, which is very interesting because Newton, who's one of these individuals, literally is known to be the discoverer of physics, which is completely the linear aspect of our world, whereas quantum physics is beyond that, goes deeper than that. So Kepler, Galileo, Descartes, they all let go of mysticism and spirituality, and the concept of harmony and vibration were separated with the emerging sciences. Analytical thought took over this ancient awareness. So when his Pythagoreans information came back out, 1500, 1600, 1700, it was riddled with analytical thought. So they kind of dissected and moved away from all the spiritual information and just took the information that would kind of help them understand what the world is from a completely linear perspective. So it is now time for a shift to reconnect our understanding of music, mathematics with our spirits and the collective vibration of all that is, so that we may use this awareness consciously and create a balanced and harmonious experience on planet Earth. Because that's what it's truly about. It's right now. Cool. Thank you so much. And it's right now, I just want to speak really quick about the Yuga cycles and how this connects to here. So we had this a revival of this analytical awareness, this non-spiritual awareness, and the Kali Yuga actually ended in 1700 AD. But between every Yuga cycle, actually, does everybody know what a Yuga cycle is? Okay, cool. So the Yuga cycle, you probably heard of the Golden Age, right? A lot of people say we're ascending onto a Golden Age. So there's 4 Yuga cycles. There's a 26,000 year cycle in which we go through an evolution of consciousness and a devolution. There's this cycle that keeps repeating itself. And when we do that, 13,000 years is an ascending cycle, 13,000 years is a descending cycle. There's the Kali Yuga, which is the Dark Ages. And the theme of the Kali Yuga is delusion, authority, and hierarchy. And that's what we've been. And I probably don't have to tell you why that is the reason, why we're in the world of delusion. What is right or what is wrong. You're if you take a pill, you're healthy, but if you take good food, you're not. It's delusional. And then also authority and hierarchy is the time where you give up your power to authority and hierarchy. And then you shift into the next age, which is the Dwarpa age. The Dwarpa age is the age of energy, sovereignty, and ideological communities. And with the age of sovereignty, you know, we're moving into that age right now, right? And the age of energy, what happens at the beginning of energy? Well, electricity is discovered, right? 1700, we exit the Kali Yuga, we start emerging into the next age. The first thing is energy, literal physical electricity. Then, after the 200-year transitory phase from 1700 to 1900, we start seeing a revival of another level of energy. Who comes out in the early 1900s? Nikola Tesla, Max Planck, Einstein, all very spiritual people. We stop seeing an atheist approach to the linear sciences, and all of a sudden we see those that are breaking free from that, and they're going beyond the atom to the subatomic world. So what happens as soon as we fully emerge into this next age is this complete awareness of the subatomic world, and then we realize, wait a second, we are energy. So what happens after the end of this age that we've just entered, you know, this goes with the whole ascension, the age of Aquarius, the next Yuga cycle, it's all connected. As we go into this next age, by the time we're done with the Dwarpa cycle, we realize we are energy and we're able to tap in and utilize our own energetic fields, right? So basically, we're moving from the linear aspect and we're coming with the musical aspect and we're merging the worlds together, which is why like the quantum world is really the mathematics of spirituality, right? It's the way to explain linearly how we're all interconnected. And that, you know, after this research on Pythagoras, I really feel that's what he was attempting to show everybody. But we went into this world now where we completely have only one aspect of what Pythagoras was teaching, and then events like this, you know, conversations around frequency and vibration and all that stuff is bringing us into that next world. And that's it. So I'm going to leave you with a little quote here from Pythagoras as we close out. If you are to do any good in the world, you do it now, not later. If people keep growing consciously, evil will destroy itself. The goal of society is to be in harmony with nature, not fight against it, but to join it. Thank you, guys. All right, I think I have like 5 minutes if anybody wants to make a comment or a question or anything like that. Yeah, I did. You can actually see my presentation on my website, portal2ascension.org. This was the shorter version. There's a 3-hour version, and I go deeper into Thales. So yeah, it's over there. Yeah. Yeah, it's free. Actually, yeah, if you sign up to my website, there's 3,000 hours of free presentations sorted by speaker, topic, and all that. And you can just type in my name, Neil, and you'll find all my presentations. And also, just to let you guys know, again, there's the flyers there for Egypt and for our conference in San Diego. And I have 4 books that I'm giving for free, so whoever grabs them first can grab one. And and that book, I have a chapter in that book about me, and it's based on energy healing. Yeah, thank you, everybody. Yeah, thank you, brother. You're welcome. Cool, sounds good. What's that? It's on Amazon. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I do not have a booth here. My friends have booths. I'll be. Well, Zenka's my friend, but you know JJ and Desiree Hertog, you know that? Yeah, so I'll be over there. Yeah, did you want to talk or you want to just do?
Is 7:34.
Did you click forgot password?
I will have to find that email address.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you my email. Email me directly and I'll help you out, okay? Yeah, let me come stand down there. It's Neil, Neil, PTA, like Paul Tom Andrews.
Okay.